I'm back to you guys with another video. This video, I'm going to be giving you guys some of my Week 11 predictions. Going to be predicting some of the games that a lot of people aren't really going to be paying that much attention to unless you are a fan of one of the few teams that's going to be playing. So the games that I am going to be talking about in this video are going to be the Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to face Washington, the Steelers taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans taking on the New England Patriots. Now, before I get into it, if you haven't already, make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I upload NFL videos and college football videos daily. Also, make sure that you guys follow me on my social media pages. My Instagram and my Twitter is both JTSports_. The link to those are down in the description down below. And if you didn't know, every video, well, almost every video that is uploaded on the channel is also available on audio platforms. So for those of you guys who like to listen to podcasts or like to listen to videos while you're at work, you don't really have great reception, or you're just a guy who rather just hear the audio instead of listening or hearing my voice or seeing me on YouTube, you guys can make sure to check out the JT Sports Podcast. Every video that's uploaded on the channel is also uploaded on all podcasting platforms. The JT Sports Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. So make sure that you guys go ahead and check that out. The link to that is also down in the description or down below. Or you can just go ahead and whichever podcasting platform that you use, you can just go ahead and type in JT Sports Podcast in the search and it should pop up. So let's get into it. So the first game I want to talk about, the Cincinnati Bengals, 2-6-1, are going on the road to face the Washington football team, who is currently 2-7. So Cincinnati got destroyed by Pittsburgh last week, 36-10. And there were a lot of people out there thinking that the Cincinnati Bengals were going to be able to pull off the upset. And I said, listen, just because Pittsburgh struggled against Dallas doesn't mean they're going to struggle against Cincinnati. A lot of you guys have to understand that the NFL is a week-to-week game. You can't particularly judge a team based on the performance that they had the week prior, because the NFL is always changing. You're never going to get the same game twice, and teams aren't going to perform the same way they did last week that they're going to perform this week. So when you look at Cincinnati in that game, here's the biggest stat that you need to take notice of. Go in the box score, go to team stats, and go down to the third down department. You will see that Cincinnati was 0-13 on third down. Now, any team that goes 0-13 on third down, most likely 99.9% of the time is not going to win. Okay? And for the Cincinnati Bengals, they couldn't run the football, and Joe Burrow threw the football 40 times. And I said that if Cincinnati is going to win this game, they're going to have to be balanced. And they're not going to win the game against Pittsburgh by throwing the football 40 times with Joe Burrow, because that simply isn't going to work. So Cincinnati lost to Pittsburgh. Washington let me down last week because they lost to Detroit Lions 30-27. And I chose Washington to win that game. All right. And they let me down. They lost that game despite winning the time of possession battle. They held the ball for 35 minutes and 43 seconds compared to the Detroit Lions only having the ball for 24 minutes and 17 seconds. But mainly most of their time possession, or the majority of the time they held the ball during this game, was in the fourth quarter, which they scored 17 points. And they almost came back and won this game against Detroit. Detroit almost blew another lead, but Detroit was able to hang on. And for Washington, Alex Smith threw the football 55 times. And listen, I am a big Alex Smith fan, and I love me some Alex Smith, don't get me wrong. But you're not going to win a lot of games when you're asking Alex Smith to throw the football 55 times. And the fact that Washington still can't really run the football concerns me. Now, I understand that they were down. They had no choice but to throw the football to get back into the game. But when you're going against the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that isn't great when it comes to stopping the run, I think you have to take advantage of that. I think that if you are Washington and you're the offensive coordinator, or you're on this offensive staff Washington, you feel pretty good about your chances and your ability to be able to have some kind of success running the football against the Cincinnati defense, which doesn't really have a good group of linebackers, and their defensive line isn't really all that great like I expected it to be coming into the season. Now, Terry McLaurin for Washington could be in for a big game. Now, he had a really nice performance against Detroit despite fumbling the football early on, which was a costly turnover. But I think he could be in for a career day against the Cincinnati Bengals secondary that, aside from Jesse Bates and Sean Williams, isn't great. So for Washington, I think this is a matchup that, once again, offensively, should be another good performance on the offensive side of football. Now, defensively, this Washington football team secondary got absolutely torched and lit on fire by Matthew Stafford last week. Matthew Stafford was 24-33 for 276 passing yards and 3 touchdowns and only got sacked once. That was a really disappointing performance that I saw out of Washington's defense last week. And this is a Detroit Lions offense that, remind you, was without their best offensive player and Kenny Galladay, who is injured right now. So Detroit's offense has struggled without Kenny Galladay. Well, their offense didn't miss a beat last game against Washington without him, because, I mean, this offense was as good as it gets for Detroit. They were running the football effectively. Matthew Stafford was making things happen. And for Detroit, they had a lot of chunk plays on Washington. For those of you guys who ever wonder how teams are still able to win games despite not being great on third down, well, if you're able to get plays in chunks, like you're able to get like 6-yard plays, 7-yard plays, you're always constantly winning on first and second down, then there really isn't a need to have to be all that great when it comes to converting on third down, really, unless you're into a game when you're trying to control the clock and you're running a ball control offense like the New Orleans Saints. Then converting on third down is really important. But third down only matters when you're not able to win the earlier downs, like when you're not able to get 6 or 7 yards on first or second down. So you look at Washington, their defense got toasted. All right. And for the Bengals, you're looking at a defense that right now is terrible against the run, just like you are. Okay, the Bengals and Washington have 2 of the worst linebacker units in the NFL. So which team is going to be able to come on in this game and get that running game going? Now, for Cincinnati, we do not know the status of Joe Mixon. He is currently listed as questionable. He has missed the last couple of games for Cincinnati due to injury. So we still don't know if he's going to be able to go in this game or not. So I'm taking that Giovanni Bernard is going to once again get the start if Joe Mixon is ruled out for this matchup. And even if Joe Mixon doesn't play, like, you still like Cincinnati's chances to be able to run the football. Now, one of their offensive linemen, I believe, is Jonah Williams. The Cincinnati Bengals coaching staff has a lot of confidence that he should be ready to go this week. So that's going to be a good thing. That's to also help out the run game as well, because you're facing a really good Washington football team defensive line. They have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Now, for Washington, you also can make the argument and say that you should be able to have some success running the football, especially with Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson has been the second best player on this Washington football team offense so far this season, aside from Ted McLaurin. So Antonio Gibson could be a really big focal point in this game for Washington in terms of what he's able to do, not only running the football, but also his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield as well. And the Bengals, I think they need to have more success running the football this game than Washington. If you were to ask me, JT, which team in this game do you think has to be able to run the football better than the opposing team to have the best chance of winning? I think that would go to Cincinnati. I think if Cincinnati wants to win this game, they're going to have to be able to have a better game running the football than Washington, simply for the fact that I don't think they're going to win this game if you're going to ask Joe Burrow to drop back 40 times on this Washington football team defense, because like I mentioned, they have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. They are 5th in the NFL in sacks per game. And the Bengals, they gave up 4 sacks last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know Washington's defensive line isn't as talented as Pittsburgh's, but they're just as good. So if you are Cincinnati and you're head coach Zach Taylor, you got to get that run game going. It is really imperative that Cincinnati finds a way to run the football, because not only is it going to help out Joe Burrow, because he's not going to have to drop back 40 times with a lackluster offensive line against a really stout defensive line with Washington, but it's also going to keep the defense balanced as well. And you don't want to have a defense that Washington that loves to rush the passer, that knows that your team can't run the football, and that all they have to do is just get after the quarterback, because then they can just pin their ears back and just go full steam ahead at trying to get pressure on Joe Burrow. So the Bengals are 0-1 on the road. They are searching for their first victory on the road this year. Meanwhile, Washington is 2-3 at home. So the team I'm going to take to win this game, I am going to take Washington to get the victory here. The reason why I got to take Washington to get this victory here is because Cincinnati is not great on third down. And Cincinnati is a team that doesn't really have a lot of those big chunk plays. Like, they have them here and there, but I don't trust their offensive line. I don't care who they have coming back. Their offensive line still isn't great. And when your backups are able to perform just as, the same as your starters, that is a position for concern. So I think Washington ends up having 4 sacks this game, 4 more sacks. I think they're going to be able to dominate the trenches. I think they're going to be able to win that time possession battle, and I think they should have a pretty good amount of success running the football. I think Cincinnati should have a good amount of success running the ball as well, but I just don't really trust Cincinnati's offensive line. Now, you can make the same argument for Washington's offensive line, where you can say, well, JT, what about Washington's offensive line? Their offensive line isn't good neither, which is true. But Cincinnati isn't as good at getting pressure on the quarterback like Washington is. So I'm taking Washington to get the victory. I think Washington wins this game. 28-27 is my final score prediction in this game. Washington is favored to win this game by 1.5 points. This game can go either way, really, but I'm going to have to side with Washington. I'm taking them to get the victory here. So let me take a break before I move on to the next game. And the next game that we have to talk about is going to be really interesting. I think this is a really under the radar game. Okay. Okay, so messed up there. So the Patriots are going to be on the road taking on the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans are currently 2-7 right now. And despite Houston being 2-7, the Patriots are only a 2-point favorite to win this game. Now, that is a little bit concerning because you look at how New England has played over the last couple of weeks. They beat the New York Jets on Monday Night Football, and then they put up one of the biggest upsets of this NFL season when they defeated the Baltimore Ravens 23-17. And you're looking at the Houston Texans team that right now isn't good. They lost to the Cleveland Browns last week 10-7. And they lost that game 10-7 against Cleveland. They had a chance to win that game, but a big reason why they lost was because they couldn't stop the run game of the Cleveland Browns. And the Houston Texans have one of the worst, if not the worst, run defense in the NFL. They're dead last in the NFL in rushing yards per game allowed, allowing 167.4 yards per game. They're also 32nd in the NFL, dead last in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, allowing 5.4 yards per attempt. And they allowed 231 rushing yards against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland barely had to throw the ball against Houston to win the game. And that is really concerning because you're facing a Patriots offense that is third in the NFL and running the football. They're third in the NFL in rushing yards per game with 161, and they're averaging 4.8 yards per carry, which is 7th. And you look at the success that New England had running the football against the Baltimore Ravens last week. Remind you that the Baltimore Ravens have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, and they completely gashed them. Okay, and you also got to take into the aspect of Cam Newton, his ability to run the football as well. So you look at how Damian Harris performed. 22 carries for 121 rushing yards. He was a man amongst boys last week. He was a large reason why the Patriots were able to win that game. And for Houston, if they can't figure out a game plan to stop this Patriots rushing attack, they're not going to have a chance to win this game. Because New England's just going to run the football, bleed clock, keep Deshaun Watson off the field, and Houston's defense is going to get gassed and they're going to get tired. Then remind you that Houston's defense is not great. Now, my biggest question is going to be, why are the Patriots only a 2-point favorite to win this game? Well, I still think that Vegas doesn't completely trust the New England Patriots. I think Vegas is like, okay, you beat Baltimore, that is a good win, but we still don't trust you. And there is an old saying that goes, sometimes the squirrel finds the nut every once in a while. And that may be what the odds makers in Vegas are thinking when it comes to this game. They may be saying, okay, so New England barely beat the New York Jets on Monday Night Football, and they were able to pull off the upset against Baltimore. Maybe Las Vegas thinks that that game was a little bit more of a coincidence. Maybe they think that New England just struck gold and they were able to pull off the victory there. But you also got to look at the weather conditions as well. Last week for Baltimore, it wasn't really ideal conditions to be throwing the football. When you look at how much the weather had an impact on the game, it was raining, and the fourth quarter it was raining really hard. So I think that is also a big reason why Baltimore kind of came out a little bit flat on offense, and they didn't really have a lot of success running the football on New England as well. But I'm just having a hard time seeing why Houston is only a 2-point underdog heading into this game, because Houston's only 2 wins have came against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and pretty much they have struggled against everybody else that they have played. So I'm looking at a Houston team that if they want to win this game, Deshaun Watson is going to have to ball out. Now, that should be something that can be done because the Houston Texans have a better passing attack than the Baltimore Ravens. Their passing attack has been a little bit more consistent. You have guys like Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, Kenny Stills, who can get the job done. And New England's secondary hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been as good as it was last year. And you can attribute some of that to Stephon Gilmore missing the last couple of games with an injury. But even when Stephon Gilmore has been on the field, he hasn't really been all that great. And speaking of Stephon Gilmore, we don't even know if he's going to be able to play in this game. He's currently listed as questionable on the New England Patriots injury report. And even when he does play, I think that Stephon Gilmore's play has taken a big dramatic step down compared to what he was last year when he won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. And I think it's fair to say that J.C. Jackson has outplayed Stephon Gilmore this year up to this point of the season. And I think J.C. Jackson is the best cornerback on the New England Patriots. And a lot of people aren't talking about J.C. Jackson. J.C. Jackson's putting up a Pro Bowl caliber year. And if J.C. Jackson doesn't make it to the Pro Bowl, I'm going to have a big grudge with Patriots fans. So for the Texans, let's talk about the head coach position. Romeo Crennel. This is a big game for Romeo Crennel because there are rumors and reports coming out that the Houston Texans could hire Romeo Crennel to be their full-time head coach. Now, a lot of Texan fans, as expected, were really irate about that story or that rumor circulating that Romeo Crennel could take over as the full-time head coach for Houston. And I can understand their frustration because you want a guy like Eric Bieniemy, who should be the first guy that Houston should, call on the phone once the offseason hits and Eric Bieniemy is able to do interviews with other teams. And I think that Eric Bieniemy is looking at that Houston Texans job, and I think he is going to take that Houston Texans job without the inch of doubt in my head, because you look at a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, they still have weapons to work with. You just have to improve the offensive line, and we know that the defense needs a lot of work. But I think Eric Bieniemy would love to take that Houston Texans job. So if Houston ends up picking Romeo Crennel over Eric Bieniemy, then I think that I'm just going to have to look at Houston. I'm going to say, what is the direction that this organization is trying to take? Because I think that Eric Bieniemy, I think that his number one choice right now is to take that job in Houston because of Deshaun Watson and what he could potentially do with Deshaun Watson as his quarterback. So don't really understand the Romeo Crennel rumors. Like I said, they're just rumors at that. But I know a lot of you Houston Texans fans aren't really happy that Romeo Crennel is popping up in your head coaching discussion. Now, if you're not able to get Eric Bieniemy, or maybe you're not able to get Harbaugh if he ends up parting ways from Michigan, then okay, I can understand picking up Romeo Crennel because there's not really a lot of great head coaching candidates out there. Robert Saleh was a hot name, but still don't really know how a lot of people still feel about Robert Saleh when you look at how the 49ers season has went so far. So that's really interesting. But for New England, my question offensively, aside from the running game, is going to be the passing game. Has New England finally found their number one option in the passing game? Jakobi Meyers over the last couple of weeks, over the last 2 weeks, has kind of been Cam Newton's go-to target in the passing game. And remind you that Julian Edelman has been banged up, and N'Keal Harry has also missed the last couple of games as well. So Jakobi Meyers has kind of taken over as that number one wide receiver in this Patriots offense. So I want to see if he's going to be able to keep it up. He had a really nice game against Baltimore last week. He had a great game against the New York Jets, and he has been the most reliable option that New England has had in the passing game over the last 2-3 weeks. So I want to see is Cam Newton going to continue to rely on Jacoby Myers as his go-to target for this game? Now, like I said, the Patriots are one of the best rushing football teams in the NFL going against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. And the Patriots are 13th in the NFL in third down offense. They convert on third down, 13th best in the NFL. Meanwhile, you have the Texans defense that struggles to get off the field on third down. They are 27th in the NFL in third down stops. They allow teams to convert on third down 47.93% of the time. That's not good. So you got the Houston Texans defense that can't stop the run. They can't get off the field. For Houston, I mean, I don't really know how you expect to win this game. And Houston is a 2-point underdog in this game for a reason. But I'm really having a hard time trying to figure out why Vegas only has New England favored to win this game by 2. I don't know if it's because they trust Houston's offense and they don't really have a lot of confidence in the New England Patriots defense. Maybe that secondary isn't as good as I initially thought, but there has to be a reason. And I'm still trying to figure out, like, I'm trying to talk myself into why Vegas would pick the Patriots to only win this game by 2 points. Because for a lot of you guys that don't know, the odds for games can tell you a lot about a team, because the guys in Vegas that make these odds, they know more about your team than I do and than what you do as a fan, because they spend all days watching games, breaking down the stats, so they can't afford to get any numbers wrong, because there are people's money at stake. So a lot of people bet on these games, so they have to look at these games. You have to always ask yourself, what is Vegas thinking? What does Vegas see about the Houston Texans that to the point that they will only be a 2-point underdog in this game? Because if I was making the odds for this game, I would have the Patriots winning this game by at least 5 points or more, or at least -5, at least, or at the very least -4. So I'm still trying to figure out why Vegas thinks that Houston has a chance to win this game, which they do, because the New England Patriots at the end of the day are 4-5 for a reason, but they have came on over the last couple of weeks. Maybe Vegas doesn't have a lot of confidence in New England like I do, but the team that I am going to take to win this game, I'm taking New England to win the game here. I think this game may be a little bit closer than what I may expect, but I think New England pulls away. I think they win this game 28-14. And remind you that New England is now back to running the football. When New England was at their best at the start of the season, when they were able to beat the Las Vegas Raiders, when they were able to go toe-to-toe with Seattle, they were able to have some efficiency running the football. And when you're able to run the football, that also opens up the passing game, because then you can use some RPOs, some play action. So for the Patriots, with the way they have ran the ball over the last couple of weeks, has been really impressive. And I'm looking at the Houston Texans defense that can't stop the run. And for Houston, you can't stop the run. So if you can't stop the run, I don't think you're going to be able to get off the field on third down, and I don't think your offense is going to have a lot of opportunities to make plays, with New England being able to bleed clock by just running the ball down your throat. So I'm taking the Patriots to get this victory here. 27-14 is my final score prediction in this game. So I'm finna take a drink of water because my throat is getting dry a little bit. For those of you guys who are still watching at this point, if you haven't already, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you guys hit that like button. Share this video with your friends, your family, acquaintances, anybody who you know who likes sports and is a sports lover. Make sure that you share the channel and share the word of JT Sports. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram and Twitter is both JT Sports _. You can find those down in the description down below. So there is one more game that we have to talk about, okay? And that game, trying to find it right now, are the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are currently 9-0. They are the only remaining undefeated team left in the NFL right now. And for Pittsburgh, last week, they destroyed the Cincinnati Bengals 36-10. And that was a really impressive victory, because the Cincinnati Bengals are a better team than what their record may indicate. And the Steelers beat them down. And remind you, a lot of people were thinking that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to have a good chance to lose that game against Cincinnati because they almost lost to the Dallas Cowboys. Well, now you're going on the road to face the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are currently 1-8. and you are a 10-point favorite. Now, Jacksonville lost to the Packers last week, 24-20, but they put up a really good fight. They played a really good game, and they were in that game all the way to the end. Something that, if you're a Jaguar fan, you haven't really seen a lot of the Jacksonville Jaguars over the last couple of weeks, because the majority of their games haven't really been all that close. They've been pretty one-sided. So the fact that you were able to take Green Bay to their limit is really impressive. And when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have given the Pittsburgh Steelers a lot of problems in the past. Like, I am friends with a lot of Jacksonville Jaguar fans, and I've had a lot of them come at me and try to say, hey, JT, do you want to bet any money on this game? And I made a lot of bets on this game, okay? I said, listen, I may make a bet, I may not, because, listen, there is a chance that Pittsburgh may lose this game, okay? Because, let's face it, Pittsburgh has a really good team. They have one of the best teams in the NFL. They have a great defense. They have a solid offense. But eventually, they're going to lose sooner rather than later. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, you can't really think about what the team has done in the past against Pittsburgh, because I'm not a guy who is really big on history. Like, I don't really think history matters all that much than what a lot of people try to make it out to be. Like, a lot of people are going to say, well, JT, Jacksonville has given the Steelers issues in the past, but at the end of the day, Pittsburgh is still a really talented team. So despite the fact that Jacksonville plays really good against Pittsburgh, they always play Pittsburgh tougher than any other team in the NFL, you still have to look at how good the Steelers have been this season. And the Steelers are currently 9-0 for a reason. Now, I know the Steelers have had some close games, but you look at how they dominated Cincinnati, that should encourage you. All right? The Steelers needed to beat Cincinnati the way they did last week. Now, James Robinson, if the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have any chance of pulling off the upset in this game, he's going to have 30 or more touches in this game. Now, James Robinson is an undrafted rookie free agent for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he has been their best player offensively. Their second best player has either been Laviska Shenault, who is currently listed as questionable heading into this game, or DJ Chark. You can pick or choose. But James Robinson is going to have 30 touches or more if Jacksonville wants to win this game. He's going to have a great game. Now, last week against Green Bay, he had 23 carries for 109 rushing yards. He was averaging 4.7 yards per carry against Green Bay, a Green Bay defense that has struggled to stop the run all this year. Meanwhile, you have Pittsburgh, whose defense has kind of struggled against the run over the last couple of games, like over the last 4 or 5 games. Pittsburgh's run defense hasn't looked as dominant as it had when the season first began a couple of weeks ago. But they did have a really nice performance against Cincinnati when it came to stopping their ability to run the football. And you're looking at Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line that is not great. You're also looking at Jacksonville Jaguars offense that's going to be starting Jake Luton at quarterback. Now, Jake Luton, rookie out of Oregon State, is starting once again in replace of the injured Gardner Minshew. And for Jake Luton, he hasn't played bad. I think he's played fairly well from what you expect from a backup quarterback. And against Green Bay, the game wasn't great, but I mean, he still made enough plays when they mattered the most to keep the Jacksonville Jaguars in that game and for the game to somewhat come down to a fourth quarter. So he did enough, but going against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, he's going to have to get the ball out quick. And if you're offensive coordinator Jay Gruden, you already kind of run somewhat of a West Coast system, so now you're going to figure out ways to attack the Steelers defense. A Steelers defense that all they really do is blitz. This is why everybody calls the Pittsburgh Steelers Blitzburg, because they blitz pretty much more than any other team in the NFL. So how do you counter-react the team that likes to blitz? Well, it's simple. You run screen passes. You find plays that attack and use the Pittsburgh Steelers' aggressiveness against them. And the best way to do that is by getting the ball out quick, a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage, and throwing screen plays. So for Jay Gruden, how are you going to ease Jay Luton into this game? Because the chances of Jay Luton having a Garrett Gilbert-like performance like he did against Dallas is slim to none. I don't really think Pittsburgh's defense is going to get shredded by, once again, another backup quarterback. And remind you, a rookie quarterback at that. So if you're Jay Gruden, your offensive game plan has to be get the ball out quick, try to run the football as much as possible, and get the ball into the hands of your wide receivers and see what they can do. Now, you're also going to have to make sure that you're going to have a couple of tight ends on the field as well. I don't really know if that's going to make a difference, but maybe you kind of want to have a tight end in there just for pass blocking purposes to give you another guy in there for a numbers advantage. But even then, when that blitz comes, Jay Lewin is going to have to be able to see the blitz coming, and he's going to have to find out a way to attack and to get the ball out fast. That's something that Garrett Gilbert did really well against Pittsburgh. One thing that he did really well against Pittsburgh was how he handled the blitz. He saw the blitz coming, and he already knew who he was going to throw the football to ahead of time. That's what Jay Lewin is going to have to be able to do if he is hoping to have a good game. His mental processing is going to be tested in this game. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars on the defense side of the football need to limit the yards after the catch. Pittsburgh's offense hasn't really been a lot of deep shots down the field. Now, they have had their fair share of plays when they've had big plays through the air, Big Ben throwing the ball deep to guys like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. But a lot of the Steelers' offense has been based on what these wide receivers are able to do after the catch, getting the ball out to these wide receivers fast and letting these wide receivers make plays. So for Jacksonville, you're going to have to wrap up in this game, and you're going to have to make sure that you don't allow Pittsburgh to beat you underneath, force Pittsburgh to throw the football downfield. Now, the matchup that I'm really interested in watching is C.J. Henderson, the rookie cornerback out of the University of Florida, versus Chase Claypool. Now, Chase Claypool, in my opinion, has been the best rookie wide receiver in the NFL. And yes, I am biased because I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but I believe that wholeheartedly. Okay, I think he has more touchdowns than any other rookie in the NFL so far at that wide receiver position. So I want to see that matchup. C.J. Henderson match up against Chase Claypool. C.J. Henderson has had a pretty solid rookie year. And I know I troll a lot of my friends who like the Jacksonville Jaguars about C.J. Henderson, but C.J. Henderson, in my opinion, has been either the best or the second best rookie cornerback in the NFL so far. And I want to see how he's going to do matched up against a fellow rookie, Chase Claypool, because Chase Claypool has been a monster. He has been a large part of the Steelers' offense, especially when they get inside the red zone. They like to try to throw him some backstroke fades, some fades over the top. They also try to get him involved with some jet sweeps a lot. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, C.J. Henderson versus Chase Claypool, when they're matched up against each other, is going to be a big matchup to watch. And also, can Pittsburgh establish the run game? Now, Jacksonville's run defense has been pretty much non-existent all year. And for Pittsburgh, you have struggled to establish the run game over the last couple of games. So if you are a Steelers fan, you would like to see the Pittsburgh Steelers try to get this run game going. Because you don't really need to throw the football to beat Jacksonville. Like, I would like to see the Steelers have a game that they're able to run for at least 120 rushing yards. And it doesn't even have to be James Conner. Like, just as a team, I would like to see Pittsburgh get this run game going, because eventually there's going to come a time when you're going to have to run the football if you want to win. Because eventually the weather's going to get bad. It's going to start snowing eventually. So eventually that run game is going to be really important as we hit the late half of the NFL season. So Pittsburgh, I want to see James Conner put up a really good game against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that hasn't been good against the run. The Jacksonville Jaguars are also 28th in sacks per game, which is really surprising me that Jacksonville has been this bad when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback, because you look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen as a rookie last year in 2019 was a Pro Bowler, and this Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line hasn't really been all that great. Now, I know they got rid of Calais Campbell. Remember, they traded Calais Campbell in the offseason to Baltimore for basically a bag of chips. So can the Jacksonville Jaguars get pressure on Big Ben? That's going to be another question. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars are coming into this game on an 8-game losing streak. They have lost 8 games in a row ever since they defeated the Indianapolis Colts week 1 this year. So, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they need this win. And we know that Jacksonville Jaguars, their playoff hopes are pretty much over. If they lose this game, you can pretty much kiss the playoffs goodbye. They will pretty much be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs if they lose this game. But they're pretty much already out of the playoffs as it is. So for Jacksonville, I'm trying to figure out, what does the future have in store? Like, what is the future? Because I don't think that Jacksonville would have brought back Dump Monroe, considering when you look at what they did this offseason, trading away guys like A.J. Boye, Calais Campbell, getting rid of Leonard Fournette. Like, I think that Jacksonville has a plan in mind. Now, why did you bring back Dump Monroe if you knew your team wasn't going to be good this year? I think Jacksonville has a plan in mind. Now, Jacksonville also allowed 9 yards per pass against the Green Bay Packers last week. which isn't great. So the Steelers passing attack could have another great game when Big Ben shreds the Jacksonville Jaguars defense for 4 or more touchdowns maybe. So if you are a fantasy football lover and you have Big Ben and you have any Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers on your team, I would start them this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because aside from CJ Henderson, you don't have anybody good on that secondary. So the team I'm taking to win without a doubt, I'm taking the Steelers to get the victory. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers win this one pretty convincingly, although I think they may struggle to start the game out. I think they may come out a little bit flat, but I think Pittsburgh wins this game 34-13 is my final score prediction in this game. I think Pittsburgh should be able to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars the same way they beat Cincinnati. Jacksonville's offensive line isn't good, and the only thing Jacksonville really has going for them offensively is their ability to run the football. Also, you have Jay Lewin back there, a rookie quarterback, going against the best defense in the NFL, and a defense that they love to blitz. So they're pretty much going to mix up their formations, try to confuse Jay Lewin, and I think that this should be an easy victory for the Steelers, and I think that they should move to 10-0 on the year after this win. So this is it for this video here. I gave you guys my prediction for the Bengals versus Washington. In that Washington game, I told you guys I like Washington. That Patriots-Texans game, I like the New England Patriots to pull that one out, even though I'm a little bit surprised that they're only a 2-point favorite heading into that game. And I like the Steelers to destroy the Jacksonville Jaguars and cover that 10-point spread. So for those of you guys who are still watching, I appreciate you guys for watching this video to the very end. Make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. I upload NFL videos and NFL content daily. Also, make sure that you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, JTSports_. Also, you guys can follow me, hitting the links down in the description down below. Also, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. You can click the link down in the description to find that as well. Or you can just go ahead and whichever podcasting platform you use, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just go ahead and type in the JT Sports Podcast and it will pop up. So thank you guys for watching. I will be